Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Kenji here. I am in beautiful Jamaica Plain, which is Boston area. Boston area. I'm staying with a friend here in Jamaica Plain for a couple days. The weather has been gorgeous. I understand Boston has only recently become gorgeous, but I'm glad it is this way today. I spent a lot of time biking all around Boston today. I went and biked over to from Jamaica Plain over to Tree Magazine. We had lunch together. I had some clam roll. I had a clam roll, fried whole belly clams, and then I biked all the way to Cambridge to see a friend, and then I biked all the way back to Jamaica Plain. So it's been a nice day. All right, shall we get to some questions? Let me get to my questions submitted via Patreon first. So I do have a Patreon. There's a free tier and there's a paid tier. I'm probably going to add more stuff to it in the future. Currently, free members get some number of posts occasionally. I'll send sometimes some extra videos, sometimes some extra recipes. Paid members get most of my YouTube videos. If they don't have a recipe written that I can link to, I will generally, not always, but often write a recipe and post it basically on my Patreon. And so that's your basic perk right now. Although I am thinking of sort of finding a way, what I would like to do is teach some cooking classes online, get a bunch of you together and teach some cooking classes, teach some recipes. And so I would like to figure out a way to do that, whether it's via Patreon or not. I'm not sure yet, but at some point you can kind of look forward to that. But let's get to those questions, all right? I'm not going to answer every single one. I'll just answer sort of select number of them, the ones that I thought to be most interesting. I don't really want to talk about Uncle Roger right now. All right, let's go. Kyle asks, I saw that you're setting up a new kitchen for work. How do you think about organizing a new cooking space, and what is most important for you to have first? Any advice for others on setting up a new kitchen or reorganizing it for a better flow? So I think about the different areas of the kitchen I'm going to be using, and what I generally want to do is minimize the amount of time that I'm walking. So for example, I am willing to, if I'm planning on making a dish, I'm willing to have like my pantry in a different place, because I can kind of go to the pantry and kind of do what I say, like go shopping at the pantry and get all the ingredients I need for a particular recipe or for a particular cooking session, load them up on a tray, and then bring them over to my workstation. The parts that I want to be sort of close together and organized so that I don't really have to walk around is once I start cooking, I don't really have to take many steps around. So I want all my tools to be there. I want my bowls to be right there. And so, generally I think about, I grew up in small kitchens. I grew up in New York. And so in a New York apartment. And so the kitchen there is a tiny galley. And then I lived in, a small New York apartment for many years also. So the kitchen there, like you couldn't really move if you wanted to. And so I actually kind of like that style of cooking where you're standing in one place and you know where every single thing is and you can just kind of spin around and grab things. It's very similar to cooking on a restaurant line, actually. I found my kitchen both in California and currently the kitchen that that I was shooting my videos in previously. I have a new kitchen that I will be shooting videos in now, but the kitchen that you've seen, I find that kitchen to be a little bit too big in that I have to walk between the counter, workspace, and the sink. So I prefer to have like that triangle between counter, sink, and stove, and I guess fridge. Counter, stove, sink, fridge. All those points, I want them to be, the space between those to be as little as possible. And so that's my general rule for organizing the kitchen. One thing I have been planning on doing is, because I'm outfitting this new smaller kitchen, I thought I would do a video showing sort of how I'm outfitting it, because I'm outfitting it starting with sort of the bare essentials first, like some real basic things, like these are like the 5 pots and pans I'm going to have in here that I can cook anything with, and then I'll slowly start adding more things onto it. But I will be doing a video where I show you, like, these are the sort of the bare essential tools that I brought into my new kitchen here. All right. Jamie, I hope that answers your question, Kyle. Jamie McClung says, can you talk to us a bit about your time in the UK, why you lived there, where you stayed, and any interesting stories or observations? Yes, I was in the UK. Sorry, is anyone having issues with my video right now? No, okay, it seems like only one more. Okay. All right. I was living in the UK because I had a girlfriend from the UK. And so I spent a summer, I spent maybe it was 4 months, 4 months living in Northern England. So I spent some time sort of staging at restaurants in London, So a couple of like Gordon Ramsay places and some others, like Michelin star places around London. But then I spent the majority of my time actually sort of up in northern England, near Leeds, a small town called Barnsley. My experience there was fun and interesting. It was a very small town in England. I think I was they didn't get too many Asian people there, and so I was kind of a novelty. And the people at the chip shop there got to know me, and then they took a picture with me and stuck me up on the wall when I left, because it was like, it was the time the Chinese guy visited them, even though I wasn't Chinese, and spent the summer there. No, I had a lovely time living in a town where I could barely understand the accent of the people, but it was an interesting time. I cooked every day. I got to know all the local, the butcher and the fishmonger and all those and the vegetable purveyor and the people at the pub. Yeah, it was a good time. And that's what I did in Northern England. At the same time, I also one of the reasons I was also there is because I was at the time applying for jobs at architecture firms, because I'd been working in restaurants for a number of years, and I was thinking, okay, I should take some time. Well, I can do some staging, but I'll also apply to some architecture firms just to make sure that architecture is not something. It was what my degree was in, and I wanted to make sure, like, okay, architecture is really not for me. And so I spent that summer actually, because I had been out of school for a number of years. And so I was a little bit out of date with my training. And so I actually spent that summer also, while I was in England, reteaching myself AutoCAD and some of the basic skills you need for architecture, so that I could subsequently get a job at a firm, which I did. I spent 6 months working there, did not enjoy it, and went back to cooking after that. All right, let's see. Next question. Tim Chen asks, is the uni capable of similar results to most, not necessarily all, of your favorite New York Neapolitan pizza joints, or are there insurmountable differences compared to top-tier restaurant ovens? An uni oven, or a Ghazni oven, or any one of those backyard ovens, they're going to be able to do what a Neapolitan or a New York pizza oven does. Basically, as long as you're getting up those high enough temperatures and you get good airflow, which those ovens do, you can cook Neapolitan style pizza. So an uni or a Ghazni, those will get up to 900 degrees Fahrenheit pretty easily, and that's the temperature you need to cook Neapolitan pizza. Cook a pizza that takes like 60 to 90 seconds, and New York pizzas cook at a slightly lower temperature, more like 600, 700 degrees maybe. So you'll cook a pizza in about 3 or 4 minutes or 5 minutes, depending on the exact style you're going for. It might take even longer, but you can easily do that in one of those ovens as well. To get a Neapolitan style is relatively easy. Relatively comparable, in fact, to cooking in a real Neapolitan style oven. Easy in the sense, not in the sense that it's easy to do, but easy in the sense that if you are able to make a Neapolitan pizza in a true Neapolitan oven right now, those skills will translate directly to being able to do it in a uni or one of those other backyard ovens. It's still a skill that you're going to have to learn, and that's not easy. That takes practice. But it's a little bit harder to make a New York style. One of the reasons it's harder is because these countertop ovens tend to be smaller. So, like a true New York style pizza might be 18 inches. Some people might say it has to be 20 inches. These ovens tend to max out at around 16 inches. Some of them go bigger, but generally they're 16 or less, so you might get a 12-inch pizza or a 16-inch pizza, which is not quite a true New York size. It's also hard to get those ovens to maintain the temperature that you need for New York pizza. So you got to kind of fiddle around with them. So that takes practice as well. So it is a little bit harder than working with a dedicated true pizza oven, but there are not the difficulties are not insurmountable. All right. Okay, let's see. Misho says, sorry, let me double check the live chat just to make sure that there's no big problems going on or anything. All right, everything seems to be doing good. Yeah, if there's any issues with the audio or video or anything, someone just mention it in the comments, and I'll address it. But it seems like everything's going well. All right, Misho says, a few months back you mentioned working on a new cookbook. Could you give us a small sneak peek of what to expect? How is it progressing, and what topics are you exploring? Yes, I've been working on new cookbook ideas for a while. I constantly have a bunch of sort of new cookbook ideas sort of in the hopper, and it's just a matter of sort of picking the one that's right, both in terms of what I feel people could use next, sort of what's right next and sort of the progression of what I'm writing, also the one that I have time for. So for instance, like I really want to write, I have a goal of writing a book about regional pizza styles, both in the U.S. and beyond, but mainly focusing on regional U.S. pizza styles and how to make them all. But sort of a real research book, so one that would require me sort of traveling around the country and doing a lot of interviews. So if I don't know if you guys have guys and gals have and non-binary pals have read my piece on Chicago thin crust pizza that I did for the New York Times last year. I've done a number of sort of deep dives into pizza, but that one was real fun to write, and it required traveling to Chicago and doing a bunch of interviewing. And so I want to do something similar to that, but for basically every significant pizza style in the U.S. And a book like that requires traveling. And right now I've got a 2.5-year-old at home. So it's difficult to do the amount of traveling required and research, on the ground research required to write a book like that. So I'm kind of holding off on that one for a little bit, maybe another year or two before I start working on that one. But the book I'm currently working on is going to be another cookbook. It's going to be sort of a big one, and it's really focused on practicality. And so if you think about the Food Lab, my first book, if you think about the Food Lab as sort of food science 101, these are lessons in food science and food technique, and a lot of the recipes in the Food Lab were sort of almost impractical because they were really there to illustrate points of food science. So it's like the meatloaf recipe in there. And if you've listened to my me and Deb Perlman's podcast about meatloaf, you'll know that the meatloaf recipe in there, I've never made it since I wrote it in the book, because I wrote it in there specifically to sort of illustrate everything you could possibly do in a meatloaf, so that you would understand everything about meatloaf. And then you treat meatloaf the way I do, which is sort of like this adaptable, malleable thing that you can you can change based on whatever constraints and parameters you have. Maybe it's time constraints or ingredient restraints, or maybe you have a guest who's allergic to something or whatever it is. But I rarely make the same meatloaf twice. And so if the Food Lab was a book that's sort of designed to teach you those basic lessons in food science and technique, my new book is going to be how to apply those lessons. So now that you know all about meatloaf, okay, well, I've got all these lessons. Well, what do I do with those? I don't really quite understand how to then take those lessons and apply them and sort of make my cooking my own. And that's what this book is going to be about. So it's really focused on practicality. So both in the sense that, like, if I want to say, you want it'll be Tuesday night dinner. If you want to have a Tuesday night dinner, a 30-minute recipe, something that is really appealing and easy to make, you'll find that in there. Or if you want like a Sunday project, you'll find it in there. But if you really want to then take those recipes and projects and make them your own, you'll find sort of guidance and sort of charts and all kinds of ways to then take those recipes and techniques and adapt them to your own style. So I think it's going to be something sort of brand new as far as certainly as far as like the type of books I've written goes. And I haven't really seen any books on the market that are like this. So if it works out, it'll work out well. If not, it will have been a fun, I think a fun and exciting project and experiment for me. So, but I am trying to sort of do something a little bit different than what is out there already, and I hope that's exciting for you as well. All right. Let's see. Soendldn says cleaning hacks, specifically cleaning oil splatter off the range. I don't really have any cleaning hacks. My cleaning hack is just to do it, just clean. Clean each time you cook, clean as you go. My big hack would just be don't let mess in the kitchen accumulate, because that's when it gets difficult to clean. So I don't know, like if you watch my videos, you'll often see like I've always got a towel in my hand, and I'm always kind of just like, kind of rubbing down surfaces or wiping up little spots of stuff that I've dropped. And I think anybody who's kind of worked in a restaurant will have that natural reaction. But I think it's a good one for home cooks to also just kind of build in. Just have like, a rag, have a kitchen towel in your hand and constantly just be cleaning up little spills on your range. If you're sauteing something in a saucepan and it's like leaving oil splatter, like don't let that oil splatter just continue to build and build and build over a cooking session. If you're standing around just watching a chicken cutlet fry, take the time to wipe up some of that oil that splattered out, because it will get oil on it again, but it's less oil you're gonna have to clean up later. Another thing that is that I find also, of course, now that I have kids and like things are a little more hectic at home, like I tend to do less like frying and less of those messy things that I would have done more of when I was single. I also tend to cook things in deeper pots and pans now. So like searing things in a deep Dutch oven or searing things in a wok is a good idea. You can even see, I'm going to make a video about demonstrating this, but you can like cook a steak in a Dutch oven, like basically covered with the lid just slightly cracked, and get like a perfectly good sear on it, get a perfectly good crust on it, like and basically eliminate all splatter. I've found so I think I'm going to write an article about that, or show a video about that at some point. But no, my cleaning hacks are really just clean as you go. There's no real hack. It's just clean, all right. Alex Herring asks, are there any early memories that you think help solidify your love of the scientific method? My grandfather on my mother's side is a scientist, university scientist, university professor. My father is also a scientist. My father on my father's side is also a scientist, and so there was just and they talked a lot at home. Their fields aren't exactly the same, but my grandfather's an organic chemist, my father's a biologist, so their fields aren't the same, but they overlap a lot. So there was a lot of sort of science talk at home. So certainly, like a lot of my interest in science came from just hearing the language of science, like around the dinner table, just at home. But I would say my biggest influence as far as my love of science goes would be Mr. Wizard's World, specifically the Don Herbert, his show on Nickelodeon in the 80s. He had an older show in the 50s and another show, I think, in the 70s, but he had a show in the 80s called Mr. Wizard's World on Nickelodeon in the 80s. I woke up every morning at 6 a.m. In my Winnie the Pooh onesies to go out and sit in front of the TV and watch Mr. Wizard teach me science. I own the DVDs now, and I watch them with my daughter, who's now 7, but she started watching those when she was 5, and I think they're still wonderful. And I think, most of what I know about, I shouldn't say most of what I know about science, but if you go through all of Mr. Wizard's shows and like every episode and watch them, I think you'll get a very good and very broad general understanding of like many principles behind physics and chemistry and biology. It's just a wonderful show. I understand, like, I think the generation after me probably had like people like Bill Nye. I never watched Bill. I was a little bit older. That was a little bit too came a little bit too late for me. But I understand Bill Nye is probably similar for a lot of people. But yeah, for me it was Mr. Wizard and MacGyver. And one thing about that's great about my new kitchen is that it's on a houseboat in the middle of Lake Union, and it's got a bedroom on it. And MacGyver lived on a houseboat, so it's cool that I've got a houseboat to work on now. All right. Kim H. Let me double check my YouTube stream right now. By the way, I'm in Boston right now, but I'm heading back to Seattle tonight, so I'm going to be here until about 4:50, so another 20 minutes, and then I've got a jet. Literally got a jet. Yeah, if you see me in Logan Airport, say hi. All right. Kim H says, hi, Kenji. Thanks for the opportunity. A couple of things for you to choose from. I'll just pick the first one. I don't think I've ever seen you bake anything besides pizza dough. Considering you are a food scientist and the precision required for baking, I would think cakes, pies, and breads would be ripe for your skill set. Any reason why you don't bake more? I do a lot of baking, actually. I bake quite a bit of bread. Yeah, I certainly would say I bake more pizza than anything else. But I've written a number of articles about baking. I didn't bake much at all until I started working at Cooks Illustrated, which is in 2006. One of my first recipes there was for a pie crust. I'd never made a pie crust before in my life when I was assigned that piece. But for that recipe, it came out in the November-December issue of 2007. I did 135 different tests, and each one was multiple pie crusts. So on the order of, I think, like 500 or 600 different pie crusts. And in the process, I tested so many things. It was so fun. It was really, really fun. I tested everything, all the basic things, it's like ratio of butter to flour, different methods of incorporating the butter into the flour, different types of flour. But I also did really fun things. Like I built a Like I got this big cardboard box, cut out a window and put like a plastic like acrylic sheet over it so you could see through, and built like lab gloves that go into it, and basically built this like chamber inside so I could that I could control the humidity of, so I could make it drier. I had a humidifier and a dehumidifier in there, so I can make it more humid and more dry inside this chamber, and I could stick my hands in there, like like you see when they're doing chemistry or biology experiments, and make a pie crust in there in like a chamber with a fixed humidity, because people always say, oh, like you can't. It's people wonder whether humidity affects the moist, that affects the way pie crusts work. Like people say, oh, on like wet days it's harder to make pie crust. Your pie crust comes out more tough, for example. And so I built this thing to be able to test that. It turns out it doesn't really make any difference whether it's extremely humid or extremely dry. It makes a difference if your flour has been stored in an extremely humid or extremely dry environment for a prolonged time in a paper bag. Then it can absorb moisture, but the humidity of the day you're making it on doesn't really actually make much difference. Anyhow, for that one, I did all kinds of tests, and I was very happy with the pie crust recipe that came out in the end. It was a recipe. There are two kind of sort of neat tricks that you do with it. One of them is that, which I think is the neater of the two tricks, is that you incorporate all the butter with a portion of the flour, and you make this kind of paste. And then you cut the remaining flour in with that paste, and so you still get similar layers of butter and flour the way you would in a traditionally made pie crust, which is what creates those sort of flaky layers when it bakes. However, because the layers of butter are not pure butter, they're actually like a butter flour paste. They're more malleable. And so that makes the whole, like the dough, much easier to roll out. Like it makes it very like almost like Play-Doh when it rolls out. So like it stops this issue that people have where the dough cracks when it rolls out. And then the other thing that you do in that recipe, which I think was like sort of the more sort of viral thing that people now is like a thing, is that you replace the water or some of the water with vodka so that you don't form as much gluten. So that you can hydrate the dough without forming as much gluten, so that the crust ends up more tender. Anyhow, I got sidetracked, but that was a baking project I did. I also did a no-knead bread recipe for Cooks Illustrated, and then revisited it for the New York Times a couple of years ago. So I have a number of baking recipes. I have a great blueberry scone recipe that I did a long time for Cooks Illustrated as well. I have a sticky bun recipe in my book. I have a number of baking recipes that I've done over the years, and it's certainly something I do. In my new book, there will be more baking. There'll be recipes for shokupan. There'll be recipes for sort of a more basic sandwich bread. There'll be recipes for pita, and a bunch of different recipes in my new book coming up as well. So I guess the answer is I do bake things other than pizza, and you will see more of those. All right. Let's see. Sidesh Sridhar says, "Is it worth investing in expensive chef's knives such as shun, etc., for a passionate home cook?" When people ask me questions of whether something is worth it or not, I always find it difficult to answer because, I think people value money different ways and people value different things different ways. So I couldn't tell you if it's particularly worth it for you. I could tell you that a great knife does not make the chef, like a good chef, a good cook is going to be able to work with any kind of knife as long as it's sharp. However, a good knife can be something that's really pleasurable to work with. And so for me, I think the most important part of a tool is that it's enjoyable for me to work with it. So, I could find a tool that on paper is the best knife in the world, or the best value in the world, say, it's like a knife that is amazingly sharp and blah, 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 and it only costs like $4. But if let's say I don't exactly like the way it looks, or I don't quite like the way it feels in my hand, and so I don't exactly enjoy using it, then to me, a knife that's more expensive but maybe not quite as good, not the stats aren't quite as good, might be worth more to me. So I think really what you do is got to ask yourself the question, like, would owning this knife, get it in your hand, try using it for a bit, and ask yourself the question, like, would owning this knife bring me pleasure? Is this something that every time I cook, I'm going to gain enjoyment from using this tool? And then, if the answer to that is yes, then I think it's probably worth it, because I think once you get past a certain quality level, like is the difference in the metal in a shun knife versus a Misono knife going to make a difference in your cooking? Like, not really. Like, they're both really high quality knives. Their stats are going to be a little bit different. They're going to feel a little different in your hand. They're going to sharpen a little bit differently, but both of them are going to get like a razor sharp edge. Both of them you're going to be able to are going to be balanced. Once you get past a certain quality level, it's all just kind of a matter of taste. And at that point, it's really, I think, just ask yourself, like, am I going to enjoy using this tool? And I think that's the most important thing. All right. Let me double check again. Everything good? Yeah. All right. Everyone looking good. How many people we got? Oh, we got a lot of people here today. Hi, everyone. All right. How's everyone doing? How's everyone's Monday? Today's a Monday, right? Yep. All right. Let's get back to our questions. We are doing a live AMA. I am currently answering questions that were submitted via Patreon. You can join my Patreon next time I do an AMA if you want to have your questions prioritized. You can join my Patreon. I also opened it started out with people who are sort of paid members, but I opened it up to anybody. So even if you're not a paid member, if you go to Patreon and check it, there you get some stuff, and you can get your you can get your questions in advance. But I will get to the other questions as well because I want everybody to have a good time here. All right. All right. Brett Moore asks, when does a recipe become yours? If you change one ingredient, one amount of an ingredient, one instruction, the title. That is a really good and difficult and complicated question. I would say that a recipe doesn't really become yours. You're kind of in constant communication with previous cooks and educators and teachers and recipe writers and future ones. So, you can adapt a recipe and you can say this adaptation of this recipe is mine. You could say maybe this, like there are techniques, say, that are relatively novel that you might develop, that you could say are your techniques, or techniques that you popularize, because you never want to say that nobody has ever done this in the history of time. But like, but I would never say that a recipe is yours. I could say this particular collection of ingredients. If you want to follow sort of copyright laws, I would say this particular collection of ingredients and these particular instructions on how to combine these ingredients, those are mine. So if I hand you this thing, I could say, this is my recipe. If I hand you this pancake recipe from my book, The Food Lab, I could say, this is my recipe for pancakes. But implied in all that is, I don't think implied in that is that I invented pancakes from scratch, right? I think it's implied that this is my particular set of ingredients for pancakes. However, pancakes are a thing that we all understand exist. And hopefully, if you, with a lot of my work, I try and make sure that I acknowledge where I got, where I got ideas from, or how I arrived at my final recipe, whether it was like through my own testing or whether it was suggestions from other books or other chefs or other writers. And so, I always consider my recipes to just be sort of an ongoing dialogue, in the same way that I think, I guess like a scientific paper is never like, this is the final answer, this is the final solution to everything. It's always just like, hey, here's some existing stuff that we've heard about. Here's our contribution and what we've changed, and maybe, what we're adding, what details we're adding, what new ground we're breaking, or like what corrections we're making to understood knowledge. And that's sort of how I consider recipes as well. Yeah. Alrighty. Jared Shepard. Where do you find new recipes? Do you have any favorite cookbook sites or other sources? Okay, so this is, I guess, a sort of similar question. I would say, I don't often follow recipes. If you watch my YouTube videos, you'll see I don't often follow recipes sort of when I cook, at least measure for measure. More often, I do it, I think, the way a lot of probably sort of trained or restaurant trained or professionally trained cooks or maybe recipe developers do, which is that they'll use recipes or cookbooks for inspiration, which is often what I do. Like I'll look to cookbooks or to online sources for ideas. And that could be ideas for everything from like, hey, like, I'm not sure what to cook for dinner tonight. Like, what should it be? Or to like, hey, like, what's something cool my friend Deb Perlman's done with fennel? Like, I got fennel. Like, I'm sick of like braising it. Like, what has Deb done with fennel? Like, I might look that up. Or it could be like looking at whatever chef's brand new cookbook and see, it's like, I don't know, like 5 years ago or like 10 years ago when like Mike Solomonov's book Sahav came out, and it's like he had this like recipe for hummus in there, tahini in there, where he blends garlic together with lemon juice, and he's like, yeah, it keeps the garlic from getting too spicy. And I was so like, it's like, does that really work? And so I tried it. I was like, holy shit, that really, I mean, holy cow, that really works. And it turns out there's some science behind why that works. And so sometimes it's ideas like that, and so like that, I don't follow his tahini recipe exactly, but now whenever I have a recipe that is going to require a lot of garlic and lemon, I'll blend my garlic together with my lemon so that the garlic doesn't get too hot. And so that's like a technique, an inspiration I took from another chef or writer that now has sort of affected everything I do. But anyhow, other cookbooks or sites or other sources. I mean, I find, I'm biased because I work for the New York Times, but I find the New York Times to be pretty consistently great as far as new ideas and a good balance of sort of new ideas and interesting ideas and practical ideas. Re-examinations of existing ideas. I think they do a really good job with their coverage. I think if there is a recipe that I want to, that I know I want to try and I want to find like a sort of well-researched base version of it, then I think generally, it's places like Cooks Illustrated and or Serious Eats, also places I've worked in the past. So again, I'm biased, but I know how they operate, so I know the type of testing they do and the type of research they do. So I kind of inherently trust a lot of what they do. These days, Milk Street, also a great source for things like that. And then a lot of individual cookbooks and a lot of individual blogs. I also find social media to be a good inspiration for me. Although my experience on social media is also biased, of course, because I've got a lot of followers, and they're all interested in specifically the types of things I'm interested in. So I've got a sort of a wide pool of people to draw knowledge from. So I thank you all for that anyway. All right. Let's see. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Hi, everyone on YouTube. Thank you for joining me here. I will be here probably another 15 minutes. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it's like at Logan. Someone can at Logan right now can tell me what the security lines are like. Maybe I can stay until 5 New York time, Boston time. But anyway, I got a little bit of time left. I'm going to keep going. I got a couple more Patreon questions to go to. Then I'll start. With some YouTube questions, maybe some live questions. All right. Let's see. Dustin says, figuring out what to have for dinner seems to be one of the most frustrating things about being an adult. What are some of your easy go-to dinner ideas? That's a good question. All right. So first of all, I would say if you want to make your life easier, figure out like 1 or 2 nights a week that can be the same meal, right? So for instance, every Saturday night for us is pizza and movie night, right? So the kids pick a movie, I make pizza. Sometimes I'll change the style of pizza, or sometimes we'll just order in a pizza if I don't have time on Friday to make a pizza. But every single Friday, I don't have to think about what I'm going to make for dinner. It's going to be pizza, right? And so you can do that. You can do Taco Tuesdays, you can do whatever. So just build in some days in the week or some days in the month where you don't have to think about what your dinner is going to be. It's just going to be the same thing. That way, it could, and you can even make the exact same recipe, the same version of it every time. But it's a good way to sort of experiment. One fun thing I like to suggest is that if you're going to do something like a taco night, if you're going to do Taco Tuesday every week, then each week, try and focus on making a different part of that meal from scratch. So like one week, just focus on making like really great salsa, but otherwise just like buy a box of like Old El Paso and ground beef and just make like a box of American style taco mix and just make your own salsa. Or like 1 week focus on making your own tortillas, or 1 week focus on like making a really great like carne asada or carnitas or something. And so don't overload yourself with work too much, but by having that sort of like once a week taco night or once a week pasta night or whatever it is, you're able to sort of experiment and learn how to do new techniques just by changing up which part of that meal you focus on and making the rest store-bought. Otherwise, like I think you don't have to worry, but like I feel like sometimes people feel pressure to change it up all the time, or like they feel like maybe the people that they're cooking for are going to get sick of the same thing all the time, and maybe that's the case. But often I find it's like my daughter and my family all love mapo tofu, and so I make mapo tofu like twice a month. And it's like if I feel uninspired, I'll just be like, yeah, I'm making mapo tofu. Everybody's going to love it, and who cares if it's like this is the second time I've made it this month. Everybody seems okay with it. And also, talk to the people you cook for, because often they can give you suggestions, and then if things don't go well, you can blame them, or but anyhow, all right, I hope that helps. Let's see. Zachary Antel says, are there any foods or dishes that you used to like but are now sick of after developing cooking, eating too much? For me, no. I tend to almost sort of separate my brain when I'm working versus when I'm eating for pleasure. So when I'm testing a dish, I've just become very good at sort of compartmentalizing and understanding, like when I'm tasting a dish, like even to the point that like if I'm say I'm working on a recipe for say cornbread, right? Um, I'm able to sort of tell my brain, hey, this time the only thing I'm tasting for is how much nuttiness I get from the brown butter, right? I'm not focusing on the texture. I'm not focusing on the sweetness. I'm just trying to focus on how much brown butter flavor I'm getting, right? And so I'm able to sort of like really focus my brain on just those two things when I'm tasting. And this just comes through practice. And I think a lot of people who develop recipes or have worked in sort of recipe testing environment will sort of develop this skill as well. It's not like I'm not like a savant. It's just, years of practice doing it. But, and so it's almost like I'm not eating exactly for pleasure when I'm recipe developing. I'm eating for, I mean, I do gain, I find it very pleasurable, the process of recipe development pleasurable, but it's very different from the sort of pleasure that I get when I'm, say, going to a friend's house for dinner, or when I'm cooking, and when I have people over for a dinner party, or when I'm going out to a restaurant. And so I can spend all day, all week working on a chicken wing recipe, right? And then go out to a bar and get chicken wings and enjoy those chicken wings. And in fact, I might even enjoy those chicken wings more because I'll enjoy them on one level where it's just like, yeah, chicken wings at a bar is great. But I'll also enjoy them on another level because I'll be able to think to myself, it adds sort of a layer of enjoyment because it adds like a sort of layer of almost analytical enjoyment, because I'll be like, okay, now that I have experience with chicken wings, I can tell, hey, maybe they brine these this way, or maybe they mix the sauce tastes like it has a ratio of like this much sauce to this much butter, for example, and so it's almost like when you're listening to like an album of music that you love, right? You can enjoy it on just like hey, the first time you're hearing it, it's like it's a fun, it's got a nice beat, it's got a nice melody, it's catchy, right? You can enjoy it on that level, but then as you hear it more and you learn more about the story of the song, you can start to hear maybe some interesting things that you hear in the production of the song, now that you know a little bit more about the history of the production, or you learn a little bit more about the songwriters' lives, and so it takes on this this deeper meaning to it. So to me, it's almost like that, where the more I work on a recipe, actually the more I'm able to enjoy it when I go out and eat it. I cannot say the same for the people who live with me, or who I test my recipes with. So like my kids, like I did this pancake. Jeb and I did a pancake episode for our show, The Recipe, and my kids got very sick of pancakes because I spent a week where every morning they were eating a couple different types of pancakes, and yeah, they got sick of pancakes doing that. All right. All right. I'll give you an extra 10 minutes. I'll just like rush at the airport because I realize I'm kind of blathering over every answer because I'm trying to give you in-depth answers. But I will get to the live YouTube questions now. I realize I probably haven't done my homework. Maybe there's a way to like organize these chat messages so that you get the most popular ones or something, but I don't really know how to do that. So I will just start answering them as I see them. All right. All right. Hi, Kenji. Do you think it's still worth going to culinary school? Okay. Well, that implies that I thought it was worth going to culinary school in the first place. And me saying that implies that I don't think it's worth going to culinary school. And neither of those things is true. I can't answer that question for you. All right. So I did not go to culinary school. And my experience with people is mixed. I know a lot of great chefs who did go to culinary school. I know a lot of great chefs and a lot of great cooks who did not go to culinary school. I could tell you that going to culinary school, having a culinary degree, is useful in the sense that it will give prospective employers the knowledge that you have a certain base level of experience and a certain base level of understanding. However, of course, cooking is a very sort of hands-on industry, and if your goal is to get a job in a restaurant, you might be better off, doing it the way I did, which is spending time staging at restaurants, sort of working your way up from lower positions and sort of, not as lower end restaurants, sort of, and learning what you want to learn, and sort of jumping from chef to chef, and sort of up the ladder. And I think that's a perfectly viable way to do it as well. To be honest, both of those methods require a certain degree of privilege. Obviously, culinary school costs money, a lot of money, and it's money that, frankly, if your job is you go out of school and you get a job as a line cook, it's money that is going to be real difficult to pay off, because cooking is not a profession that pays well. Whether you're a line cook or even if you're a chef, it doesn't pay well unless you get really, really lucky. Restaurants are not like a generally a successful, great business to go into. They can be, but generally they're not that successful. So, so you're at a disadvantage going to culinary school in that sense. You have to be able to willing to take those risks, and of course, being able to do sort of what I did, which was work your way through up through restaurants. I was able to do that because I had a security net. It's like I knew that whether not consciously, but I knew sort of subconsciously, like certainly like I had the confidence to be able to say, hey, I'm gonna kind of throw quote unquote throw away my education and go straight into working at restaurants for minimum wage out of college because I'm passionate about this and I want to do it. But I think in the back of my head, or not, subconsciously, I kind of also knew like, hey, if this doesn't work out, it's like, all right, well, I can move back in with my mom. I can move back in with my parents. It's like I'm not going to end up living on the streets. I'm not going to end up dead. Like, this is not going to completely destroy my life if I don't succeed at this. So I recognize that whether you want to get into cooking as a through culinary school or through staging, through working at restaurants, it requires a certain level of advantage. And that's a difficult choice to make. And it is a difficult career to get into, and it's a difficult career to maintain, even once you get into it. So I would say make sure that if you want to go into restaurants, you are passionate about it. The best way to do that, I think, is to find a restaurant near you that will take stages. Go in between lunch and dinner service, at a not peak hour during the restaurant. Ask the chef if you can come in and stage during a service, just so you can go in and sort of get your toes wet and see what a service is like. See if you can go in and spend a day just working there, doing prep work. They'll have you peeling carrots. See if you can see what a restaurant is like and see if that's the life for you. I think for a lot of people, you might love home cooking, you might love cooking, but a restaurant is not the life for you because cooking in a restaurant is very different from cooking at home. So, yeah, I would say culinary school, not necessary, but there are advantages and disadvantages, whichever route you try and go to. All right, let's see. Kevin Luag says, hey, Kenji, huge fan. Are you going to continue doing the Teriyaki tour? Thanks for being you. Oh, thank you for being you. And thank you for thanking me for being you, for being me. Am I going to continue the Teriyaki tour? Yes, I am going to continue the Teriyaki tour. I think I got 19 episodes in out of the the 80 something I'm planning on doing. Yeah, I've had a number of things going on in my personal life recently that have occupied a ton of my time, and so yeah, so for the past few weeks I simply have not had time to do the teriyaki, but things are starting to settle down again, so I'm hoping that I will get back on track with the teriyaki tour this month. I've been greatly enjoying it. The teriyaki tour, that's another example of a thing there that people have been asking me, am I getting sick of it? And the answer is no. Like, I find it really fascinating and I find it really fun to sort of try and turn on my analytical brain and see notice these sort of minute differences between what are generally all very good options for as far as lunch in Seattle goes. I'm going to sit over this way so it's a little more contrast. As far as lunch in Seattle goes, so that's been a lot of fun. It's also been, I find, a wonderful way to explore Seattle more and get to know all the different neighborhoods because yeah, I like exploring the city. So yes, the teriyaki tour coming back soon. All right, let's see. How is it to own a restaurant? How has your perspective changed over time, if it has? Well, I don't currently. Oh, okay. So I was a partner at a restaurant in San Mateo called Worst Hall. I was the chef there as well. That restaurant still exists. It is still functioning. It's still wonderful. The people who run it are still great. It's in San Mateo near B Street, near the San Mateo station, near the train station there. But I'm no longer a partner or an owner there. When I moved to Seattle, to me, it didn't feel right to continue sort of participating in that part of the restaurant from a completely different city where I really couldn't be hands-on. And so I gave my shares to my sous chef, and I'm no longer an active part of the restaurant, although I'm still friends with them. So I don't own a restaurant anymore in that sense. I am a partner at a bakery still in San Mateo called Backhaus. They actually just opened their second location in Burlingame. I'm a partner there. I'm on the board there. They are dear friends of mine. I've helped them here and there through with advice or over the years with a number of things as they've sort of developed their business. However, I'm not like a hands-on day-to-day partner there. So in that sense, I am I have a stake in a restaurant still, but I wouldn't really consider myself sort of a day-to-day an owner in the sense of like a day-to-day operator of a restaurant. I would not want to also. I also in the future, I would not want to operate a restaurant, be a day-to-day operator of a restaurant. I'm always happy to, when I am able to help friends who want to do these kinds of projects. But I got that out of my system, and I don't really feel like I would want to sort of operate. Certainly not a restaurant as big as Worst Hall which was like dozens of employees. For me, it's just not my favorite thing to do is that kind of management. If I ever was going to go into a restaurant again, it would be in the distant future when my kids are older, because I don't want to restaurants pull away a lot of your time, and I don't want to spend any time away from my kids any more than I have to. So it will be once my kids are much older, and it would certainly be a smaller place, some place that I can kind of, I don't know, manage myself. All right, let's see. We got a few more questions we can do. Have I ever considered moving back to California? No, I don't think I'd move back to California. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I really love it in Seattle. We moved to Seattle specifically because we love Seattle, and I still love it in Seattle. I love raising my kids here. I love living here. I love the people. I love the access to nature. I don't see any reason why I would really leave Seattle, I think. All right. Let's see. Should I try Secret Aardvark hot sauce? Absolutely, you should try Secret Aardvark hot sauce. Of course you should. Secret Aardvark hot sauce is from the Portland area. They actually make a number of different sauces, but the company makes a few different sauces, I think 3 different sauces. But Secret Aardvark, their classic one, their mustard-based hot sauce, it is delicious. It goes great on hot dogs. It goes great on quesadillas. It goes great on anything. Yes, Secret Aardvark hot sauce. I heartily recommend it, from Portland. All right. Beantown, when can we expect a definitive Kenji Chicago deep dish recipe? I actually have a deep dish recipe that I've done for my this upcoming pizza book project that I've been telling, that I mentioned earlier, but I'm not going to release it until that book is out. If you want a great deep dish recipe, I haven't tried it yet, so I can't vouch for it in the sense that I haven't tried the actual recipe. However, Eric Kim just released one in the New York Times. He did a massive amount of research. Eric Kim, I've never had any of his recipes go bad for me. It was a very well-researched article, so I would suspect that if you want a good deep dish recipe, Eric Kim is a great place to start. I would look there. Christian said, would you ever move to Colombia? Would I ever move to Colombia? Well, we've talked about moving to Colombia or retiring to Colombia. I don't think that's really on the table at this point. But no, I mean, Colombia, I think I would like to spend some time. I certainly intend to spend more time visiting there. I would love to spend some more sort of extended visits there. I've done like a 3-month visit there, and certainly lots of like multi-week visits there. And I certainly plan on spending more visits there. Over the years, I've been visiting Colombia for over, I think, over 16 or 17 years now, multiple times a year. And so I feel come to really feel connected with the country and the culture and the people. And I plan on personally continuing to explore that connection over the years. I've really enjoyed it. All right. Danny, how do you now make recipes that traditionally require alcohol? That's a good question. Okay, so for folks who don't know, I'm an alcoholic, and but I quit. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I quit drinking. I'm now on day 189 of my recovery. So I haven't had a drink in a long time. However, I still do cook with alcohol. So I keep a bottle of sake. As any alcoholic will tell you, every alcoholic is a little bit different. Some people cannot deal with any sort of presence of alcohol. A presence of alcohol in their home might be dangerous for them. And for them, of course, having something to cook with in the house would be an issue. for me, having I went through a period where I didn't keep any wine in the house. Now I keep sake because I cook a lot of Japanese food, and it's a very essential part of the cuisine. So I keep sake in the house. I keep Chinese cooking wine in the house. I keep powdered dried white wine and powdered red wine for cooking dishes that require red or white wine in the house right now. And that's the extent of the alcohol I keep in the house. But so for me, it's not an issue. I personally don't feel the temptation to drink those things, but everybody's journey is personal. Everybody has a different relationship with alcohol, whether you're an alcoholic or not. And so, you have to do what's right for you. So that works for me. It might not work for you. And in which case, honestly, I don't really have a great answer. I think there are these dried red and white wine products. They're powders. I don't have a link for them. I have mine from like years ago. I bought like a huge supply of them, but I don't know exactly. I can't remember where I got them, but you can probably find them online, and I think those are wonderful if you want to get the flavor of red and white wine and you don't want any alcohol in your home. As far as other things like sake, mirin, Chinese wine, that's harder. And honestly, if you are an alcoholic or living in a situation where you can't have any alcohol at home, you might just have to abstain from those types of dishes or find something else to cook. All right, I do have to catch a flight. I'm headed back to Seattle, but this has been a lot of fun. And if this was a lot of fun for you, maybe I'll try to do these pretty regularly. Maybe I ask folks to support me on Patreon, and I always really appreciate it. And I always feel like I don't give quite enough there because I always feel like I don't give quite enough on any of my platforms because I don't know. I always feel like busy. I'm like, I got to do this, I got to do that, but I need to deal with all these personal things going on. But anyhow, I hope this was fun for everyone, and I hope I got to your question if you submitted. I know I didn't get even to a fraction of the questions submitted, but anyhow, guys, gals, non-binary pals, if you missed the beginning of this, I think it's going to be posted up on YouTube. I will try and make sure that there's a way to get it posted up on YouTube. If not, and you can see it there. All right, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.